Well, thank you very much for joining me in this video. I want to talk to you today about final inspections, or more specifically, inspections of a property after the deal's been struck, accepted, conditions have been removed, but before closing. Used to be there was nothing in an offer that allowed the buyer to go back into the property and have another look. It's become more and more popular, and I think it's been misused. We had an offer come through not that long ago where the buyer was requesting 9 subsequent visits. Well, we didn't leave it that way, but that's what they were looking for. And I think that there's perhaps argument for 1 or maybe 2. Perhaps you're going to order an area rug that's going to go on the hardwood floor in the living room. You want to measure the size, or you want to measure the size of a window. But a subsequent visit doesn't give you the right to bring in a building inspector or to bring in an appraiser or bring in a contractor. It doesn't allow you to do all these things. It allows you to go through and have a quick look at the property. But my question for today is, what if there's no provision whatsoever in the agreement of purchase and sale for you to have a subsequent visit to the property? Do you have the right to a final inspection just before closing? And the guarded answer to that would be yes. And I want to explain to you why. There's really 2 reasons why I can say that. The first is the principle that the agreement of purchase and sale makes it clear that right up until closing, the property is at the responsibility of the seller, and after closing, it's at the responsibility of the buyer. And it's up to the seller to maintain the property in the condition it was in when the buyer saw it when he tendered an offer. In fact, the agreement of purchase and sale states all buildings on the property and all other things being purchased shall be and remain until completion at the risk of the seller. So 3 or 4 days after the offer's been struck, the furnace blows up, has to be replaced. The seller is obligated to replace the furnace. So he puts in a new furnace, and there was a used furnace in there. It's certainly as good as it was before. Doesn't give him the right to find some secondhand beat up furnace that's on its last legs and put that in. It's got to be at least in as good a condition as the buyer saw it. So how does the buyer know if the property is maintained in that condition unless he can go back and have a look at it? So that gives him the right to a final inspection. The other reason is interesting too, and that comes into insurance. The agreement of purchase and sale states that the seller will maintain insurance on the property for fire and flood. And it says if there's substantial damage to the property, the buyer has a choice. He can either walk away from the deal and get his deposit back, or he can take the proceeds of the insurance and complete the transaction. Again, to quote from the agreement of purchase and sale, in the event of substantial damage, the buyer may either terminate this agreement and have all monies paid returned without interest or deduction, or else take the proceeds of any insurance and complete the purchase. Some years ago, we were involved with a property. It was a Victorian brick farmhouse in the country, and before closing, it burned to the ground. Well, it turned out that the owner of the property, the homeowner, had replacement insurance, and the insurance company was going to build a brand new Victorian house, same specs as what was there, but it was going to have brand new hardwood floor, brand new wiring, brand new windows, brand new brick. Everything was going to be brand new. So the seller said, well, I'm not going ahead with the transaction. I'm just canceling the transaction. The buyer said, no, I don't think so. I'm going to take the proceeds and I'm going to get a new house. And that's exactly what happened. So the lawyer would argue, how do we know that there was substantial damage to the property if we can't go in and have a look? So in maintaining it in its condition or examining it for substantial damage, the buyer has the right to a final inspection. Here's how the final inspection should work. On the day of closing, the buyer should have the balance of funds in escrow in his lawyer's trust account. In other words, he's already got the deposit, the money's coming in from the mortgage, and the balance of the funds is held in escrow, so he's already committed to that. Then he goes through the property quickly, and it would be nice if the seller was already gone, because then he can tell exactly the condition the property is in. He guys a walkthrough and finds the property in the condition that he understood he was buying, and he calls his lawyer, and they complete the transaction, they register the title, and the property is now his. That's how it should work. What happens if he goes in and it's not the way he was expecting? For example, let's suppose there's a lot of junk left behind. I'm a landlord, had a tenant move out not that long ago, a month or two ago. They were good tenants. But when they left bags of junk. They left old broken furniture. There was a shed where the lawnmower was. It was jam full of broken toys and all kinds of stuff right up to the roof. There was a trampoline in the backyard. They just left it that way. Well, I could have raised the stink on after them. I hired a company to come in, haul it all away, clean it up, and life goes on. We had a situation one time where a new buyer went into the home, walked through the door, flicked on the light switch, and no lights came on. They thought there's something wrong with the hydro. Turned out the seller had taken every light bulb out of the house. So you never know what you're liable to find. You're liable to find, tires in the backyard, liable to find a garden shed that's fallen over. There's all kinds of things that can be discouraging. It may not have been left in broom-swept condition. I would say to a buyer, look, if the house is substantially the way it was, you like the house, put up with having to roll up your sleeves and clean it a little bit and move in and enjoy it. But there's other things that can happen. Let's suppose there were appliances that were supposed to be left. For example, fridge and stove. And the buyer goes through on his final visit before closing, and he finds out that the stainless steel double door fridge has been removed and replaced by a beer fridge out of the garage. That isn't the arrangement, and he's not going to be pleased. Well, he's going to call his realtor, who's going to call the listing agent's realtor, and the lawyers are going to get involved, and something's going to have to be done. The buyer can dig his heels in. He doesn't give him the right to walk away from the transaction, but he can arrange and negotiate perhaps a holdback. Sometimes I've seen the realtors get out their checkbook because they want it to be a happy experience for the buyer. But it's always a challenge, but it's less of a challenge if you know about it before closing than if you find out about it after closing. So yes, final inspections have their place. Yes, final inspections can be done properly, and make sure that if you're representing a buyer or you're representing a seller, that they understand their rights. Thank you very much for joining this video. Talk to you again next week.